I'm Morgan, 28 years old, and 3 months ago, my grandfather left me $75,000 in his will. When my mother found out, she immediately demanded I give it to her for her latest business scheme. After I refused, things got eerily quiet for a week. Then my phone buzzed with a text. Family meeting at my house this Sunday. Attendance mandatory. Something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be your average family dinner. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. Before I tell you what happened when I arrived at that family meeting, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to stand your ground against family pressure. Trust me, you'll want to see how this nightmare unfolded. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. Two-story house with a well-kept lawn, family vacations to the lake every summer, and holiday cards featuring all of us in coordinating outfits. But behind, closed doors, my mother Diane's controlling personality dominated our home like a storm cloud that never quite passed. Mom was 52, with perfectly highlighted hair and a wardrobe of business casual clothes she wore even on weekends. For as long as I could remember, she had dreamed of being an entrepreneur. I wasn't meant to be just somebody's employee, she would say, looking at my father with barely concealed disappointment. Her entrepreneurial spirit would have been admirable if it hadn't been so financially devastating for our family. There was the home jewelry business that consumed our dining room and $12,000. The luxury pet accessories company that lasted 8 months and cost nearly $20,000. The gourmet food delivery service that never made it past the planning stage but somehow still managed to drain our family savings. Each failure was never her fault. The market wasn't ready, her partners let her down, or people just didn't recognize quality when they saw it. My father, Robert, at 54, had long ago surrendered any decision-making power in the family. A mid-level manager at an insurance company, he funneled his paychecks into my mother's dreams without complaint. Your mother has vision, he would tell us kids when we questioned why we couldn't go on the school ski trip because money was tight. His gray-flecked beard and perpetually tired eyes made him look older than his years. My brother Ethan was the golden child of the family. At 30, he had escaped to Chicago where he worked in finance, lived in a high-rise apartment, and called home just often enough to maintain his favored status. He had my mother's ambition, but channeled it into a stable career. When he visited, Mom would transform our home. Fresh flowers appeared, special meals were prepared, and her criticisms of everyone else temporarily subsided. My sister Amanda, 25 and the youngest, had chosen a different path as a struggling artist. She created mixed media pieces in a tiny studio apartment that Mom subsidized while simultaneously criticizing. It's just a phase until she finds something real, Mom would say within Amanda's earshot. Despite this treatment, Amanda remained fiercely loyal to our mother, perhaps because she depended on those subsidies, or perhaps because she'd learned it was easier than resistance. Then there was me, stuck in the middle, neither rebellious enough to be written off nor successful enough to be celebrated. I had always been closest to my grandfather William, my mother's father. While Mom saw him as old-fashioned and overly cautious, I found comfort in his steady wisdom. Grandpa William lived just a few blocks from our childhood home in a modest house filled with books. Every Sunday after church, I would escape to his place while the rest of the family went home. We would sit on his screened porch with tea, reading books side by side or talking about everything from ancient history to current politics. Sometimes we would take nature walks in the nearby park, where he taught me to identify birds by their calls and trees by their bark. You have a teacher's soul, Morgan, he told me once as I enthusiastically explained a book I'd read about marine biology. You light up when you're sharing knowledge. That observation stayed with me, even as I followed the practical path my mother insisted upon. After college, I took a job as a corporate analyst at a healthcare company. The position paid well, enough and offered stability, but sitting in a gray cubicle analyzing spreadsheets day after day left me feeling hollow. My true passion had always been working with children, specifically those with learning differences. During college, I had volunteered at a program for kids with dyslexia and found it incredibly fulfilling to help them discover their strengths and build confidence. My dream was to become a special education teacher, but the practical roadblocks seemed insurmountable. I already had $65,000 in student loan debt from my undergraduate degree, and the thought of taking on more for a teaching certification and master's in education made my stomach knot with anxiety. My mother had made it clear that changing careers would be throwing away good money after bad. Teachers barely make enough to live on, she reminded me during every family dinner. And you already have all that debt from your first degree. Adding to my general sense of instability, my boyfriend of 3 years, Daniel, had recently moved out of our apartment after I discovered he'd been cheating with a coworker. The breakup left me not just heartbroken, but also shouldering the full rent on an apartment we had chosen together. Money was tight, my career felt like a dead end, and my personal life was in shambles when my grandfather passed away and everything changed. Grandpa William's funeral was held on a crisp autumn day. The maple trees surrounding the cemetery blazed with red and gold leaves, his favorite time of year. I stood between my father and sister as the minister spoke about a life well lived. My mother dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue on the other side of my father. My brother Ethan had flown in from Chicago, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit as he checked his watch repeatedly during the service. The reception afterward was held at my parents' house, where distant relatives and my grandfather's old friends shared stories about him. I escaped to the back porch, overwhelmed by grief and the performance of it all. That's where Mr. Calloway, my grandfather's attorney, found me. "Morgan, I wanted to let you know there will be a reading of the will tomorrow at my office at 2:00, he said, his voice gentle. "Your grandfather asked that all family members attend." The next day, we gathered in the wood-paneled conference room of Calloway and Associates. Mr. Calloway, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and precisely combed white hair, methodically went through the standard legal language before getting to the actual bequests. To my daughter Diane, I leave my house and its contents, with the exception of items specifically designated below. My mother nodded, having already assumed the house would be hers. To my son-in-law Robert, I leave my collection of classic books, which I know he has admired. My father looked surprised and touched by this acknowledgement. To my grandson Ethan, I leave my restored 1967 Mustang convertible. My brother smiled slightly, though I knew he had little interest in classic cars. To my granddaughter Amanda, I leave my collection of original artwork and $5,000 to further her artistic education. Amanda gasped at this unexpected support of her creative pursuits. Then Mr. Calloway paused briefly before continuing. And to my granddaughter Morgan, who has shared my love of learning and teaching, I leave the sum of $75,000 to be used for her education and pursuit of her true calling. The room fell silent. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me as I tried to process what I'd just heard. $75,000. It was enough to pay off my student loans and fund my teaching certification. It was freedom. "There must be some mistake," my mother said, breaking the silence. "Dad never mentioned leaving that kind of money to Morgan." Mr. Calloway adjusted his glasses. "There's no mistake, Diane. Your father was very clear about his wishes." He turned to me. "Morgan, he also left this letter for you. He asked that you read it privately." I took the sealed envelope with trembling hands. My mother's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "But that's not fair to the rest of the family," she insisted. "That money should be distributed equally, or at least put towards something that benefits everyone." Mr. Calloway remained professional but firm. "William was of sound mind when he made these decisions, Diane. The will has been properly executed and is legally binding." After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking lot and carefully opened my grandfather's letter. His familiar handwriting brought tears to my eyes. Dear Morgan, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't grieve too much for me. I've had a good life, filled with books, nature, and the love of family, especially you. I'm leaving you this money because I've watched you struggle between what you want to do and what you feel obligated to do. You have a gift for teaching and for understanding those who learn differently. The world needs more teachers like the one you could be. This money is not just financial freedom, it's permission to follow your heart. Your mother won't understand this gift. She has always seen money as power, not possibility. Stand firm, little bird. Your wings are stronger than you know. All my love, Grandpa. I pressed the letter to my chest and finally let myself cry. For my loss, for his belief in me, and for the opportunity I never thought I'd have. When I finally left the parking lot, I found my mother waiting by my car, at my apartment building. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We need to talk about Dad's money," she said as soon as I approached. "I've been thinking about it, and I have an amazing opportunity that could help the whole family." She followed me inside, talking rapidly about her newest business idea, an organic skincare line using locally sourced ingredients. "The market is booming right now," she explained, pulling out her tablet to show me a hastily created business plan. "With your inheritance as startup capital, we could launch within months. You'd be a partner, of course. We all would benefit." Her eyes shone with the familiar entrepreneurial fever I'd seen so many times before. "Mom, I just found out about this money an hour ago," I said. "I need time to think." Of course, she said, patting my hand. "Just don't make any hasty decisions. Family should come first, and this could be life-changing for all of us." After she left, I spent hours researching both my mother's business idea and teaching certification programs. The skincare market was indeed growing, but it was also extremely competitive, with major corporations and established indie brands dominating the space. My mother's plan had significant holes: unrealistic revenue projections, vague marketing strategies, and no contingency plans. Meanwhile, I found a well-regarded certification program at a local university that would take 18 months to complete. With my grandfather's money, I could pay off my student loans and cover the certification costs, with enough left over to supplement my income during the lower-paying student teaching phase. The decision seemed clear to me, but over the next week, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my family. My mother sent daily texts with new ideas for the business and links to articles about family businesses. My father called to remind me how much my mother had sacrificed for us kids. Even Ethan texted to say, "Just go along with it. You know how she gets when she doesn't get her way." After a week of constant pressure, I decided it was time to formally refuse my mother's request. I spent hours calculating exactly how the inheritance would be allocated. $48,000 for remaining student loan balances after consolidation, $20,000 for the teaching certification program, and $7,000 as an emergency fund during my career transition. I called my friend Taylor, who had always been straight with me about my family dynamics. "You know she's going to make this about her, right?" Taylor warned. "This isn't about the money, it's about control." "I know," I sighed. "But Grandpa wanted me to use this for my education. I have to honor that." I arranged to meet my mother at a coffee shop, neutral territory where she couldn't make a scene. I arrived early and chose a table in the corner, away from other customers. When she arrived, she was already smiling too brightly, as if victory was assured. "I've been thinking about your business proposal," I began after we got our drinks. "And?" She leaned forward eagerly. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't invest the inheritance in your skincare line. Grandpa left this money specifically for my education, and that's how I'm going to use it. I'm going back to school to get my teaching certification." Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, and then a calculated understanding. "Of course you want to pursue teaching, honey. That's admirable. But why not do both? You could invest most of the money in the business, make a profit, and then have even more for school later. The business plan has too many risks, I said gently. And I've already been accepted into the certification program for the spring semester. I've made my decision. That's when her mask of understanding fell away. So you're just going to be selfish after everything this family has done for you? Her voice rose slightly. When you were in college and needed extra money for books, who sent it? When your car broke down last year, who paid for the repairs? I appreciate everything you've done for me, Mom. But this isn't about that. This is about honoring Grandpa's wishes. Oh, don't be naive, she snapped. Dad left you that money because I told him about your loan struggles. He meant for it to help the family. He just didn't specify because he trusted you to do the right thing. I knew this wasn't true. My grandfather had been clear in his letter. Mom, that's not what his letter said. He wanted me to become a teacher. Let me see this letter, she demanded, holding out her hand. I shook my head. It was personal, from him to me. Her eyes narrowed. You know what your problem is, Morgan? You've always been selfish, always in your own little world with your books and your dreams, never thinking about what the family needs. This isn't about what the family needs, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. This is about what I need, what Grandpa wanted for me. Well, when your teaching dream falls apart and you're living in a tiny apartment making nothing, don't come asking the family for help, she said, gathering her purse. Family loyalty goes both ways. She stood up, looked down at me with disappointment, and walked out, leaving her untouched coffee on the table. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. My father called, his voice heavy with disappointment. Your mother is very upset, Morgan. I wish you would reconsider. Family should stick together. My sister Amanda sent a series of angry texts. How could you do this to Mom? She's crying in her room right now. You've always been so selfish. Then came the social media fallout. Amanda posted a vague but pointed status. It's amazing how some people can turn their backs on family the moment they get a little money. True colors showing. Several relatives commented with support, even though they couldn't have known what was happening. The only surprise came from my brother Ethan, who called late that night. Don't tell Mom I called, he said immediately. Look, I know her business ideas never work out. If you gave her that money, it would be gone in a year with nothing to show for it. Then why did you tell me to go along with it? I asked, confused. Because it's easier, he admitted. I learned a long time ago that fighting her isn't worth it. I just stay in Chicago and send birthday gifts. It's simpler that way. Well, I can't do that. This is my future we're talking about. Your choice, he said. But publicly, if she asks, I'm on her side, just so you know. The week that followed was exhausting. Extended family members I barely spoke to called to understand both sides. My mother's sister, Aunt Linda, left a voicemail about the importance of honoring parents. My cousin Jacob sent a text reminding me that family is forever, even when it's difficult. I felt increasingly isolated, second-guessing my decision despite knowing it was right. Then, just as the barrage seemed to be subsiding, I received a text from my mother. Family meeting this Sunday at 2 p.m. We need to resolve this situation as a family. Attendance mandatory. The formal tone was unusual for her, as was the concept of a family meeting. We hadn't had one of those since Amanda had been caught sneaking out in high school. Something about it felt orchestrated, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I texted back a simple, I'll be there, and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. The days leading up to the family meeting were filled with increasing anxiety. I had trouble sleeping, waking up at 3 a.m. with conversations playing on repeat in my mind, thinking of all the things I should have said to my mother. During the day, I found myself unable to concentrate at work, staring at spreadsheets that blurred before my eyes. By Thursday, I realized I needed help and called my therapist, Dr. Rivera, whom I'd been seeing since my breakup with Daniel. She fit me in for a Friday appointment. Family pressure can be particularly difficult to resist, Dr. Rivera said after I explained the situation. We're conditioned from birth to seek approval from our parents, but there's a difference between respecting your parents and allowing them to control your adult decisions. But what if I'm being selfish? I asked. Maybe I should help the family business. Morgan, from what you've described of your mother's business history, would this money actually help your family in the long run? Or would it disappear into another failed venture? She had me role-play potential conversations and reminded me of grounding techniques if things became overwhelming. Remember, you can always leave. You're an adult with your own transportation. You're not trapped. That evening, I researched inheritance laws in my state, confirming what I already knew. The money was legally mine to use as I saw fit. No one could force me to give it away, not even family. I also called Taylor, who immediately offered to be my emergency contact. Text me before you go in and when you leave, she insisted. And if you need an excuse to leave, just text me the word rescue and I'll call with a fake emergency. You think it'll be that bad? I asked. I hope not. But your mom doesn't call formal family meetings unless she's planning something. Better safe than sorry. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. I ran through potential scenarios in my head, practiced responses to accusations, and reminded myself of my grandfather's letter tucked safely in my bedside drawer. Sunday morning arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle that matched my mood. I dressed carefully in jeans and a blue sweater, casual but put together. No point giving my mother ammunition about my appearance on top of everything else. As I drove the familiar route to my parents' house, memories flooded back. Weekend dinners where my mother critiqued everyone's life choices. Holiday gatherings where appearances mattered more than enjoyment. My father's defeated shrug when conflicts arose. The knot in my stomach tightened. When I turned onto their street, I noticed something odd. The driveway was full of cars, and several more lined the street. This wasn't just going to be my parents, sister, and brother. My mother had invited others to what was supposed to be a family discussion. I parked a few houses down and sat in my car for a moment, trying to calm my racing heart. I texted Taylor, "There are tons of cars here, not just family. What is she planning?" Taylor replied immediately, "Remember, you can leave any time. You don't owe anyone that money. I'm ready to call if you need me." I took a deep breath, checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, and walked slowly to the front door. Before knocking, I sent one more text to Taylor. "Wish me luck." Then I knocked on the door of my childhood home, unprepared for what waited inside. My mother opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morgan, finally, everyone's here now." She pulled me into a stiff hug, the scent of her expensive perfume enveloping me. Come in. Everyone's so excited to see you." The house looked unusually clean and formal, with fresh flowers on the entryway table and the good guest towels in the half-bath. I could hear the murmur of many voices from the living room, along with the clink of glasses. This was no casual family meeting. "Mom, who exactly is here?" I asked quietly as she led me toward the living room. "Just people who care about the future of this family," she replied cryptically, her hand firm on my elbow. As I stepped into the living room, the conversation immediately hushed. The space had been rearranged to face the fireplace, where a projector screen had been set up. Chairs were arranged in rows like a small conference, with about 15 people, seated and looking expectantly toward me. I recognized my father sitting in the front row, looking uncomfortable. Amanda sat beside him, shooting me a smug look. My aunt and uncle were there, along with 2 cousins. But there were also 5 people I had never seen before. 3 men and 2 women in business casual attire, looking oddly professional for a Sunday family gathering. "Everyone! Morgan has finally joined us," my mother announced, steering me to an empty chair in the front row. "Now we can begin." Before I could process what was happening, she strode to the front of the room and clicked a remote. The screen illuminated with a professional-looking slide that read, "Bloom and Glow Organics. A family legacy. As most of you know, my daughter Morgan recently received a generous inheritance from my father," my mother began, smiling at the room. "And today, we're excited to announce that she'll be investing that inheritance in our new family business venture." My jaw dropped. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me as blood rushed to my face. "Morgan will be a founding partner in Bloom and Glow Organics," she continued smoothly, clicking to the next slide showing elegant packaging with the company logo. "Her $75,000 investment will secure her a 15% stake in what promises to be a revolutionary addition to the organic skincare market." One of the unknown men leaned over and patted my shoulder. "Congratulations on your investment," he whispered. "I've seen the business plan. Very impressive potential returns." I was too shocked to respond. My mother had told these people, whoever they were, that I had already agreed to give her my inheritance. She was presenting it as a done deal. "Let me introduce our team," my mother continued, gesturing to the strangers. "This is Vincent Lawson, our marketing consultant, Stephanie and Thomas Green, our manufacturing partners, and Rachel and David Winters, our first angel investors who are matching Morgan's contribution." The two couples nodded politely in my direction. They had invested based on the assumption that I was already committed. My stomach churned with anxiety and anger. My mother launched into a detailed presentation about the skincare line, projecting outrageous growth estimates and profit margins that seemed detached from reality. By year 3, we expect revenues of $2 million, with profit margins of 30%, she announced confidently, as if reading tomorrow's weather forecast. I glanced at my father, hoping for some recognition of the absurdity unfolding, but he was staring fixedly at the screen, his expression unreadable. Amanda was taking notes enthusiastically, while my relatives nodded along with my mother's every point. "Mom," I finally said, my voice coming out smaller than intended, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" "We're in the middle of a presentation, Morgan," she replied without looking at me. "We can chat after everyone's questions have been answered." "But I haven't agreed to any of this," I said, my voice stronger now. She laughed lightly, as if I'd made a small joke. "Don't be modest, sweetie. We all know you're committed to the family's success." She clicked to the next slide before I could respond. My uncle leaned forward from the row behind me. "Your grandfather would be proud, Morgan," he said. "Using his gift to help the whole family. That's real loyalty." My aunt chimed in. "When my father left me money, I used it to help your uncle start his accounting practice. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for the greater good of the family." I felt trapped, surrounded by people who had already decided how I should use my inheritance, money that my grandfather had specifically intended for my education. The room seemed to be closing in on me as my mother continued her presentation, outlining roles for various family members in the new company. Just as I thought things couldn't get more surreal, the front door opened and my brother Ethan walked in, looking confused. He scanned the room, taking in the presentation and assembled crowd with raised eyebrows. "Sorry I'm late," he said, giving my mother a questioning look. "Traffic from the airport was terrible." My mother's smile faltered slightly. "Ethan, we weren't expecting you until later. Take a seat. I'm just going through the business plan for our family venture." Ethan slid into a chair in the back row, catching my eye with a puzzled expression. He hadn't been told about the investors either. As my mother clicked to a slide showing a 5-year financial projection with increasingly fantastical numbers, something inside me snapped. All the anxiety, all the guilt, all the manipulation of the past weeks crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. This was never going to end unless I ended it. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "Morgan, I'm not finished," my mother said sharply. "Yes, you are," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "And so am I." The room fell silent as I turned to face the assembled group. "I need to clarify something. I have never agreed to invest my inheritance in this or any business venture. My grandfather left me this money specifically for my education, with a personal letter explaining his wishes." I turned to the investors. "I'm sorry if you were led to believe I was participating in this business. That was never the case." My mother's face flushed deep red. "Morgan is just nervous about such a big commitment," she said quickly. "We've discussed this extensively as a family." "No, we haven't," I interrupted. "You asked, I refused, and now you're trying to force my hand by creating this spectacle." I gestured around the room. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" my mother hissed, abandoning her pleasant facade. "How dare you lie to these people and try to manipulate me into giving you my inheritance?" I countered. Amanda stood up beside my mother. "You're being so selfish. This business could help all of us if you just stop thinking about yourself for once." My uncle joined in. "Young lady, family obligations should come before personal desires. Your grandfather would want you to help your mother." I took a deep breath, centering myself as Dr. Rivera had taught me. My grandfather knew exactly what he was doing when he left me this money. He knew I wanted to become a teacher, and he wanted to make that possible for me. I'm honoring his wishes, not betraying them. I turned to the investors. "Again, I apologize that you were misled. This is the first time I'm hearing about any of you or your involvement." The green couple exchanged concerned glances, while the Winters began whispering to each other. Vincent, the marketing consultant, was already packing up his materials. "This meeting is over," I announced, surprising myself with my firmness. "Mom, Dad, we can talk about this privately when you're ready to have an honest conversation. To everyone else, I'm sorry you were brought into a family matter under false pretenses." I walked toward the door, feeling lightheaded but determined. As I passed my brother, he gave me a slight nod of respect. My mother called after me, her voice breaking. "If you walk out that door, Morgan, don't expect to be welcomed back. Family stands together." I paused at the doorway, turned back to the silent room, and said clearly, "Family doesn't manipulate and lie to each other. When you're ready to respect my boundaries, we can work on being a family again." Then I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. The moment I got to my car, my carefully maintained composure crumbled. My hands shook so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my phone and called Taylor. "I need you," was all I managed to say, before breaking down completely. "I'm on my way," Taylor responded without hesitation. "Where are you?" "In my car, outside my parents' house." "Stay there. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Just breathe." While waiting for Taylor, my phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages. "Amanda, you've ruined everything. Mom is hysterical. My father, your behavior was inexcusable. Call your mother and apologize." My aunt, I've never been so disappointed in a family member. Each message felt like another weight pressing down on my chest. Taylor arrived and immediately suggested we go back to her apartment. "You shouldn't be alone right now," she insisted, offering to drive my car since my hands were still trembling. At her place, with a cup of tea in hand, I recounted the entire ambush. She invited business partners and investors, Taylor. She told them I had already committed the money. "Who does that?" "Someone desperate and controlling," Taylor said simply. "You did the right thing by walking out." For the next week, the silent treatment from my mother was punctuated only by disappointed calls from my father. "You've broken your mother's heart," he said during one call, his voice heavy with familiar resignation. "She had such hopes for this business. Dad, she lied to those investors about my involvement. That's not just manipulative. It could have been legally problematic. She was just trying to create an opportunity for the family, he insisted. You know how much these ventures mean to her. And you know how they always end, I countered. The jewelry business, the pet accessories, the food delivery. How much money has she lost over the years? His silence was answer enough. 10 days. After the disastrous family meeting, my brother Ethan showed up unannounced at my apartment. I figured you could use an ally, he said, holding up a bottle of wine. And I owe you an explanation. Over glasses of Merlot, he revealed that our mother had approached him first about the skincare business. She called me right after the will reading, asking if I wanted to invest my Mustang, sell it, and put the money into her business. When I refused, she moved on to you. Why didn't you warn me? I asked. He shrugged. Honestly, I thought you'd cave like everyone always does with her. I didn't expect you to stand your ground. He looked at me with new respect. I should have given you more credit. Is she always going to be like this? I asked. Manipulative? Controlling? Probably, he admitted. But now she knows her old tactics don't work on you anymore. That's something. Ethan also confessed that beneath his successful facade, he was struggling financially. Chicago is expensive, and I've made some bad investments trying to prove I could be as entrepreneurial as Mom always wanted. I'm actually thinking about moving back to Minnesota, getting a less prestigious but more stable job. She'd see that as failure, I noted. Maybe it's time we both stop measuring our worth by her standards, he replied. The following week brought a new crisis when my sister Amanda showed up at my workplace. I was in a meeting when the receptionist called to say my sister was in the lobby, refusing to leave until she spoke with me. I found Amanda pacing near the entrance, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw me, she launched into a tirade loud enough for everyone in the reception area to hear. How could you abandon the family like this? Mom's business partners pulled out because of you. She's been working on this for months and you ruined it in 5 minutes. Amanda, please lower your voice, I said, mortified as colleagues walked past, poorly disguising their interest in the scene. This isn't the place. Where is the place then? You won't answer calls, you won't come home. Let's go outside, I insisted, guiding her toward the door. In the courtyard outside my office building, Amanda continued her accusations. The Winters wanted their deposit back, and the Greens said they couldn't work with a family that had such obvious internal conflicts. Mom had to cancel the product development contract. I'm sorry the business fell through, I said carefully, but I never agreed to be part of it. Mom lied to those people about my involvement. She was trying to help you commit to something meaningful instead of wasting Grandpa's money on some teaching pipe dream. It's not a pipe dream, Amanda. It's what I want to do with my life, and it's what Grandpa wanted for me. She shook her head in disgust. You've always thought you were better than us, with your books and your special bond with Grandpa. Well, congratulations. Now Mom's crying every day, Dad's walking on eggshells, and Thanksgiving is going to be a disaster. Thanksgiving? I hadn't even thought about the upcoming holiday, just 3 weeks away. The idea of sitting around a table with my family after everything that had happened made my stomach turn. Maybe I should skip Thanksgiving this year, I suggested. Amanda looked at me as if I'd suggested canceling Christmas. And confirm that you've completely abandoned this family? Great plan. After she left, I had to explain the situation to my supervisor, who had witnessed part of the confrontation. She was surprisingly understanding and suggested I speak with HR about implementing a visitor policy for my protection. Family issues can sometimes spill over into the workplace, she said kindly. We want to make sure you feel safe here. That evening, I received an invitation to spend Thanksgiving with Taylor and her parents. No pressure, but my mom always makes too much food, and they'd love to have you, Taylor texted. The relief I felt at having an alternative was overwhelming. As November progressed, My mother's private cold shoulder became increasingly public. She posted vague but pointed Facebook updates about ingratitude and the pain of raising children who don't appreciate your sacrifices. Extended family members liked and commented sympathetically, most without knowing the full story. I found myself becoming increasingly isolated from my extended family as my mother controlled the narrative. Cousins who had always been friendly became distant. Holiday party invitations mysteriously stopped arriving. Then, unexpectedly, I received a card in the mail from my great-aunt Patricia, my grandfather's sister. "Dear Morgan," she wrote in careful penmanship, "I've heard rumors of family discord, but I want you to know that William told me about his plans for your inheritance. He was so proud of your desire to teach. This family has a history of difficulty." Personalities. William had to set firm boundaries with his own parents to pursue his academic career. "Stand your ground, dear. Call me any time." She included her phone number, and I found myself calling her that very evening. We talked for nearly 2 hours, with Aunt Patricia sharing stories about my grandfather's youth and his own struggles, with family expectations. "Your mother gets her determination honestly," Aunt Patricia explained. "Her problem is that she directs it at controlling others instead of mastering herself. William saw that pattern and worried about how it affected you children. Her understanding and support gave me strength as I moved forward with my plans. I submitted my application to the teaching certification program and received my acceptance letter in early December. I celebrated quietly with a small group of friends, feeling both excited and melancholy that I couldn't share this milestone with my family. Just before Christmas, a package arrived at my apartment with no return address. Inside was a collection of old family photos, including several of my grandfather and me during our Sunday visits, and a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, my favorite book that we had often discussed. There was no note, but I suspected it came from my father. It felt like a quiet acknowledgement, perhaps even an apology, though he wasn't ready to express it directly. 6 months after the family meeting disaster, my life had transformed in ways both painful and liberating. I had paid off my student loans in full, a weight lifted that I hadn't fully appreciated until it was gone. The teaching certification program was challenging but fulfilling, confirming daily that I had made the right choice. My initial practicum experience in a third-grade classroom with several students who had learning differences was everything I had hoped it would be. The first time a struggling reader successfully worked through a difficult passage with my guidance, the look of pride on his face validated every difficult family conversation I had endured. My relationship with my family remained strained, but was slowly evolving. My brother Ethan had indeed moved back to Minnesota, taking a less prestigious but more stable position at a local financial firm. We met for coffee regularly, rebuilding a sibling relationship that had been distant for years. My father called occasionally, our conversations careful but gradually warming. He never directly mentioned the inheritance situation, but he asked about my classes and seemed genuinely interested in my new path. My sister Amanda remained loyal to our mother, but her angry messages had subsided to occasional cool texts about family logistics. My mother maintained her distance, reaching out only through my father as an intermediary. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday in June, an email arrived from my mother. "I think it's time we talked. Coffee at Riverside Cafe tomorrow. At 10 a.m.? I stared at the message for a long time before replying with a simple, "I'll be there." I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a table on the patio where we would have privacy but still be in public. When my mother arrived, I was struck by how tired she looked. The carefully maintained highlights in her hair had grown out slightly, and her usual immaculate makeup seemed hastily applied. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting down across from me. The formal politeness was new, a recognition, perhaps, that our relationship had fundamentally changed. "How have you been?" I asked, unsure where to begin. "Busy," she replied automatically, then sighed. Actually, not great. The skincare line didn't work out, as you probably guessed. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. I took no joy in her disappointment, despite the circumstances. Your father thought I should tell you that you were right about some of the financial projections being optimistic. She stirred her coffee unnecessarily. The investors backed out completely after they did more market research. This was as close to an admission of error as I had ever heard from my mother. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. I may have been hasty in how I approached the situation with your inheritance, she said carefully. I was excited about the business potential and thought you would see it too. I shouldn't have told the investors you were already committed. It wasn't exactly an apology, but for my mother, it was significant. Thank you for saying that, I replied. I hope you understand why I had to stand my ground. Your grandfather always was stubborn about education, she said, a hint of her old dismissiveness returning. You're very much like him. I take that as a compliment, I said simply. We talked for nearly an hour, carefully navigating around the raw edges of our conflict. I learned that my father had experienced a minor heart scare the previous month. High blood pressure and chest pains that had turned out to be stress-related, but had frightened both my parents. It made me think about what's really important, my mother admitted. Your father wants peace in the family before anything else happens. So do I, in my own way. We didn't resolve everything in that one conversation. There was too much history, too many patterns of control and resistance between us. But it was a beginning, a recognition that our relationship needed to change if it was to continue at all. Over the following months, we established a new, more distant, but also more respectful dynamic. I set clear boundaries about discussions of my career and finances, and my mother, with visible effort, tried to respect them. A new challenge arose when my brother Ethan proposed to his girlfriend Sophia. Wedding planning immediately raised questions about family dynamics. Who would sit where? Who would speak? How we would all interact after months of tension. You have to come, Ethan insisted when I expressed hesitation. I'm not getting married without my sister there. Mom will behave. Sophia already had a talk with her about respecting boundaries during wedding events. I had to smile at the thought of my future sister-in-law laying down the law to my mother. Sophia sounds like exactly what this family needs, I told him. The wedding planning created a strange but useful neutral zone where my mother and I could interact with a common purpose. We weren't close, but we were civil, brought together by our love for Ethan and desire to make his day special. My relationship with my sister Amanda thawed more slowly. Her art career had hit a rough patch, and my mother had finally stopped, subsidizing her apartment, forcing Amanda to take on roommates and a part-time job. The new financial reality had begun to change her perspective on family dynamics and support. Did you know Mom gave me money every month for 3 years? She asked during a rare sister lunch. I always thought it was because she believed in my art, but now I wonder if it was just to keep me on her side. Mom does love you, I said carefully, but sometimes love and control get tangled up for her. A year after the inheritance confrontation, I completed my teaching certification and secured a position teaching 4th grade at an elementary school with a strong special education program. During the summer before my first official teaching job, my father called with an unexpected invitation. Your mother would like to have a family dinner to celebrate your new position, he said. Just the 5 of us, at home. She's cooking your favorite lasagna. He paused. It would mean a lot to both of us if you came. I considered declining, but realized I didn't want to. Despite everything, these people were my family. We were learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to relate to each other as adults. I'd like that, I told him. Tell Mom thank you for the invitation. The dinner was neither as uncomfortable as I feared, nor as warm as I might have hoped. My mother had indeed made my favorite lasagna, a peace offering of sorts. We talked about safe topics: Ethan and Sophia's honeymoon plans, Amanda's new art show, my classroom preparations. Near the end of the evening, as I helped my father clear the table, he spoke quietly. "Thank you for standing your ground last year. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." When I looked at him in surprise, he added, "Your grandfather would be proud of the teacher you've become." Coming from my father, who had spent decades avoiding conflict, it was a profound acknowledgement. In the months that followed, I created what I privately called my family boundaries document, a personal guide to managing my new adult relationship with my parents. I decided which topics were open for discussion and which were off limits. I determined how frequently I wanted to visit and under what circumstances. I practiced phrases for redirecting conversations that ventured into uncomfortable territory. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. We established a new normal based not on the controlling patterns of my childhood, but on mutual respect between adults. That fall, as I established my classroom and got to know my first group of students, I found myself sharing parts of my inheritance story with fellow teachers. One colleague was facing similar pressure from her parents about a career change, and she found courage in hearing how I had navigated my situation. "It's like you gave me permission to make my own choice," she told me after deciding to pursue her dream of becoming a school counselor despite her parents' objections. On the 1-year anniversary of my grandfather's death, I visited his grave with a bouquet of his favorite wildflowers and news of my teaching position. Sitting on the bench beside his headstone, I told him about my students, my growing confidence in the classroom, and the slowly healing family dynamics. "The money was life-changing, Grandpa," I said aloud. "But the real inheritance was learning to stand up for myself and my dreams. You knew that all along, didn't you?" The autumn breeze rustled the trees overhead, and I felt a profound sense of peace. My grandfather had given me the financial means to change my career, but more importantly, he had shown me the value of living authentically, even when it meant facing family disapproval. Standing up to my mother had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it had led to something essential: self-respect. I had honored not just my grandfather's explicit wishes, but also his implicit hope that I would find the courage to live by my own values rather than someone else's expectations. That, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure like I did? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic family stories. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is set boundaries with the people we love. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage on your own journey of self-discovery.